Well, good morning. Today's Thursday, October 31st. Happy Halloween. And today we are in John's Gospel, chapter 9. We're going to be looking at verses 1 through 12 today. So I'll go ahead and begin reading. He says, as he passed by, he saw a blind man from birth. And his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, it was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Having said these things, he spit on the ground and made mud with saliva. Then he anointed the man's eyes with the mud and said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar were saying, is this not the man who used to sit and beg? Some said, it is he. Others said, no, but he is like him. He kept saying, I am the man. But they said to him, then how were your eyes opened? He answered, the man called Jesus made mud and anointed my eyes and said to me, go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed and received my sight. They said to him, where is he? He said, I do not know. So what is this passage saying? And then how do we apply it to our life? Well, there's something that's interesting, right? And that is that the disciples, when they saw this man that was blind, they had an assumption. And the assumption was right along the lines of the friends of Job. Job, you must have done something wrong to offend God to have all this calamity fall upon you. And so their assumption was that this man who was blind from birth, either he sinned or his parents sinned. And this thing that's happened to him is some kind of judgment from God. That's their assumption. And the assumption that many of us have is that, we call it karma, right? There's all kinds of jokes out there about, oh, someone got karma, and they got what's coming to them. That's the idea. And we somehow assume that when bad things happen to people, it's because of something they did. It's somehow the judgment of God. But the truth of the matter is, Jesus, he kind of squashes that idea right offhand, and he says, this thing has happened so that God might be glorified. Listen to what he says again. It is not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. It's a common question. It goes back forever. I forget which psalm it is off the top of my head, but one of the psalms, it's a psalm of Asaph, and he basically says, Lord, here I am. I've tried to live right and do good and honor you and everything, and I suffer while the wicked, they go on about life like, they're never sick, like only good things happen to them. And then there's a transition in that psalm where it says, and then I went into the house of the Lord, and I saw their end. In other words, God showed Asaph that, yeah, they might be seemingly going through life right now without any problems, but in the end, they're going to be judged, and it's going to be horrible. Yeah, you might be suffering now, Asaph. You might be having struggles and trials now, but in the end, you're going to be exalted. You're going to be saved. You're going to inherit the kingdom of God. And so, stop comparing yourself to these people over here. Someone has put it this way, that for a Christian, for a believer in Jesus Christ, somebody who's been born again, saved, this world is the closest thing to hell we will ever have to face. But the flip side of the coin is that for those who are not saved, those who are not Christians, not born again, this world is the closest thing to heaven that they will ever be able to enjoy. It's a matter of perspective. And, you know, we have to understand that our life is but a vapor. The book of James tells us our life is but a vapor. Here one moment and gone the next. When you get my age, you realize how you blink and it's like, where did time go? I mean, wasn't I just in high school the other day? And then you realize, oh no, it was 40 years ago. And or 50 or whatever, and time just flies by. And then your body starts to give way and your memory starts to slip, and you know, you're nearing the end. And it's like, where did time go? I think it's important just for us to have a perspective that just because bad things happen, it doesn't necessarily mean the judgment of God, but it's an opportunity for God to be glorified through an individual. We just finished up last week, was our last week of Good News Club, and for this semester. And during our Good News Club, we had a mission study where each week we would kind of tell a little bit more about Joni Eareckson Tada. Now, if you know who that is, Joni Eareckson Tada is a lady that in the early 70s, late 60s, somewhere in there, as a teenager, had a diving accident and became a quadriplegic. And you just think, you know, how tragic, how horrible for a young lady to be paralyzed from the neck on down. And confined to a wheelchair, God used her such a mighty way and continues to use her. She's had a ministry now for 50 years where she has ministered and given hope to thousands upon thousands of other quadriplegics and people who suffer from other things, because she gives hope, because she's never been she even though she's in a body that's broken, she is still able to share the hope of Jesus Christ. And just an amazing testimony, an amazing story of how God has been glorified through her life in spite of her being paralyzed. And that's kind of the message here. Here's a man who is, Jesus gives him his sight through a rather, let's be honest, a rather strange miracle, spitting on the ground, making mud and packing his eyes with the mud and washing off in the pool called scent. I mean, what does that even mean? I really don't know, and I don't think it's healthy to try to read into that and say, well, there's some symbolism here or something. I don't know. All I know is Jesus healed the man. It's raining leaves. Jesus healed the man. And so God's purpose was to demonstrate his power through this blind man. So how do we apply this to our life? Is there any sin for us to forsake? Any promise to claim or principle to apply to our life? Any example we can learn from? Any command to obey? Anything to be thankful for? Well, are we guilty? Are you guilty of judging other people because of circumstances, because maybe they're going through a difficult time or something like that? You're saying, oh, well, I'm glad they finally got theirs. You know, I think about 1 Corinthians chapter 13, the love chapter. It says, love does not rejoice in evil. I don't think it's Christ-like at all to be happy when someone suffers, even if you think they deserve it. Look, if I got what I deserved for 1 minute, I would perish in my sin. That's just the truth. That's the truth for all of us. That's why we're so dependent on the mercies of God and God's grace to forgive us. Because we don't want justice. You hear a lot of people crying for justice nowadays, but the fact of the matter is, if we got justice, we'd all perish. So don't be judgmental. Don't be judgmental. Don't be guilty of that. Pray for people's salvation. Pray for people to repent of their sins and be saved. Don't rejoice when they're judged. Is there any principle to apply to our life or promise? I don't see a promise. But I think the principle is clear, that Jesus says that this man was blind from birth so that the purpose of God might be manifest in him, that God might be glorified through him. And I think we need to ask ourselves, when we go through a trial, when we go through pain and suffering, instead of being angry at God, we need to ask God, how can you be glorified through this? You know, what's like in the case of Joni Eareckson Tada, what's more encouraging than to see someone who's got every reason to be bitter, every reason to be angry, every reason to be discouraged, and yet puts a smile on her face and goes around praising God and giving God the glory that, hey, I might be paralyzed from the neck down, but I still have my mind, I still have my life. I still have a voice that I can declare the glories of God. Instead of complaining about what you don't have, be thankful for what you do have. A good friend of mine in church put it in perspective. He said he had knee surgery, and he said, yeah, my knee hurts, but I'm thankful I have a knee. I still have a leg. It may be hurting, but it still works. It's all about perspective. And so that's a principle that we need to have applied to our life. The example, like I said, is I used Joni Eareckson Tada a couple times. I think that's a good example of how we need to look at trials, at tribulation. I remember hearing a sermon by John Piper one time, and the title of the sermon was "Don't Waste Your Cancer." Don't waste your cancer. And the point of the sermon was that it's an opportunity for God to be glorified in and through you, through your trials. Other people are watching you. How are you responding to this trial? I don't see a command here, but I do see always something to be thankful for. I'm thankful for the grace of God to see us through the trials that we have to bear. recall the words of the Apostle Paul when he had a thorn in the flesh, and he prayed 3 times that God would remove that thorn in his flesh. And God's answer was no, because my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in your weakness. Sometimes things come at us to humble us, to teach us reliance on God so that He can be glorified in us and through us. And for that, I'm thankful. That's all I have for today. I hope you have a blessed day. It's going to be a gorgeous day. It's supposed to get up to 80 degrees today, but sunny. Hope you enjoy this beautiful weather. If you have kids and they're going out trick-or-treating tonight, please be safe. And remember, candy's fine, but remember the whole thing about Halloween is wicked. So take this as a time to teach your children. Amen. That's all I have for today. Hope you have a blessed day. We'll see you again tomorrow.